Welcome to Beautiful Thrift Homemaking. I'm Linda. We're reading through a vintage cookbook. It was published in the year 1917, and it is called 1,000 Ways to Please a Husband. We're in the month of October. This is an instructional novel also, and we're following the first year of married life for a fictional character named Bettina. She is sharing her homemaking secrets with us, especially in the kitchen. And so there are recipes with each chapter along with the storyline. So right now in the month of October, we're on chapter 62. Alice gives a luncheon. And today we'll also read chapter 63. "These are the first baking powder biscuits I have ever made for company," said Alice. "But I knew that I must begin sometime. Mother has gone out to spend the day. I persuaded her that my efforts to serve a luncheon would upset her nervous system completely. Just think, girls, you are at my mercy, for I have prepared this humble repast with my own useless hands." "Shame on you, Alice. Don't pretend to be so humble. You do everything so easily that I'll not be surprised to see you papering your own house and acting as your own plumber and doing every other hard thing. A useless butterfly like you, who turns out to be so competent after all, is the despair of all us plodders who have always plodded and always will." And Ruth sighed. "Never mind, Ruthie," said Bettina. "I've eaten a mighty fine luncheon that you cooked yourself, 4 or 5 courses, if I haven't forgotten." "Yes, and I worried every minute during that day." "We all do at first, except maybe Alice." "Why worry?" said Alice. "Seems to me I've heard that expression before. You girls won't die if the biscuits do fail. I'll give you bread. Harry and I are going to laugh at our own mistakes and enjoy them. Isn't that a good philosophy? But girls, to get down to biscuits, I want to ask you, one and all, collectively and individually, to be in my wedding party, with the addition of Sister, who isn't here. She and Bettina will be the matrons of honor. Will you?" "Will we?" they all cried with enthusiasm. The luncheon menu was as follows: salmon salad, green beans, butter sauce, baking powder biscuits, watermelon pickles, cream puffs, and coffee. And in this chapter we have Bettina's recipes for the salmon salad, the green beans with butter sauce, cream puffs, and the cream filling to go in them. So we'll talk about those recipes and look over them after we read chapter 63. Chapter 63 is called Motoring with the Dixons. "Not through dinner yet," exclaimed the Dixons at the door. "May we sit down and wait? It's a beautiful evening and we've come to get you to take a long drive with us." "Fine," said Bob. Come out to the dining room and talk till we're through." "And then I'll help Bettina clear off the table," said Charlotte. "Well, people, it looks like a good dinner, and Sherlock Holmes deduces, moreover, that you have roast lamb yesterday." I'm not reading that right. I'm going to start that paragraph over. I apologize. "And then I'll help Bettina clear off the table," said Charlotte. "Well, people, it looks like a good dinner, and Sherlock Holmes deduces, moreover, that you had roast lamb yesterday for your Sunday dinner." "You might also deduce that we had baked potatoes, from which these creamed ones are made," laughed Bettina. "Nothing else to guess at, except that part of a cabbage made coleslaw yesterday and scalloped cabbage today. And my dessert, while simple, has no secret past," she added as she removed the first course. "A plain and simple custard, that's all." "Suits me," said Bob heartily, "especially when it's cold like this." "By the way, Bettina," said Charlotte, "did you ever get rid of those black ants you were telling me about?" "Yes, I've never seen one since." "Well, you know how worried I was about the little red ones that bothered me. Aunt Isabel, in a letter, gave me a remedy that has worked like magic." "Aunt Isabel has her uses after all," teased Frank. "I should say she has. She knows all about housekeeping from A to Z. Her remedy sounds queer, but I can vouch for its efficacy. So if anyone ever asks you what to do for red ants, you tell them this, Bettina. I took some covers from baking powder cans and some mason jar covers and some pie tins and chalked the sides well with common school crayon. Then I set them on the pantry shelves to hold dishes of whatever kinds of food the ants liked. The ants never climbed over those chalked covers, and soon they had all disappeared. I don't have to use the chalk tins anymore. But if I ever see a red ant in my pantry again, I'll get out the chalk. Couldn't you make a heavy chalk mark on the shelf paper around the dish of food? Asked Bob. I tried that, but it didn't do any good. But the other way worked beautifully. I'm glad to know about it, said Bettina. Well, Bob, are you ready? It will take only a few minutes to carry out the dishes and pile them up. I'm sorry we've kept you people waiting. For dinner that night, they had cold sliced lamb, creamed potatoes, chili sauce, scalloped cabbage, bread, butter, and baked custard. And we have the recipe here for scalloped cabbage, chili sauce, and cup custard. All right, so join me in just a second and we will discuss these two chapters. Thank you. All right, so let's see what we can say about these two chapters. Chapter 62, Alice gives a luncheon. Alice gives a luncheon for friends, feeling comfortable enough to experiment on them as she tries recipes for the first time. She made biscuits with baking powder as the leavening, and this was an experiment for her to serve this to friends. However, she wasn't comfortable cooking around her mother, so she made sure that her mother was out for the day when she had her friends over. And there was a special reason she had this particular group of friends over, as we found out at the end of the chapter. She invites them to be in her wedding party because, yes, Alice is engaged. She's engaged to Harry, Mr. Harrison, and so she is practicing, getting ready to be a homemaker. Now, I was thinking about this and wanted to encourage you, if you're an insecure cook, that you could feel comfortable maybe practicing with friends, having friends over and not worrying too much about the outcome. It's more about the getting together, and that's what true hospitality is. It's to actually see the people who you're with, not to entertain them. Entertaining is different from hospitality. So hospitality is actually seeing the people that you're with and communing with them. Sharing a meal, yes, can be part of it. So she decided that if the biscuits did not turn out, that she would just serve bread instead. So what a good attitude. And in fact, Alice had taken Bettina's encouragement to heart about not worrying, and she was determined not to worry how things came out as she's learning. In fact, her fiance Harry agreed, and to quote the chapter, Harry and I are going to laugh at our own mistakes and enjoy them. Isn't that a good philosophy? And I was wondering what you think about that. I do think that's a good philosophy, because we'll get further in life if we have that attitude, won't we? So another thing that's being modeled for us here in these chapters, Bettina does a good job with that, doesn't she? Now, Ruth is a less secure cook, and she is also an engaged young lady, and she has commented that Alice is doing so well with her cooking that she perceives that Alice would end up papering her own house and acting as her own plumber. So they are definitely building Alice up, and it's good, isn't it, to say what builds others up. Now, I had this experience just this morning myself, very similar to what went on in this chapter. Well, although Alice's biscuits did come out well. So this morning I woke up and found that my daughter had a friend over, One of her best friends stayed over the night. I knew she was there during the late evening. She ended up staying over, and she lives pretty far away, so it was kind of a long drive to go at night. So she stayed the night, and I realized that I saw her car out there, so I realized she was at our house and thought, I'll make a special breakfast for the girls. Now, these are 17 and 18-year-olds. So I decided to make a Dutch pancake, also a Dutch baby, also called a German pancake. And it's a recipe I've made before, but apparently I have two recipes for this. And apparently this one used way too much butter for the pan that I put it in. So I cooked it in a large cast iron. And you're first supposed to start the recipe by melting a cube of butter in the bottom of the pan. So I did that, and then I added some very thinly sliced apples from my garden, from our Granny Smith apple tree, and I put those in the bottom with the butter. But when the baking time should have been up, it was still very soft and then the house started filling with smoke, and yes, the smoke alarm went off. My husband had to take it down and put it in the refrigerator to get it to quiet down. And so I thought, okay, that's still having to bake. It's baking even longer because of all that butter that was spilling over, smoking air, and it was awful. Anyway, so then I thought, okay, I have a half of a bagel left in a package. I will, the girls came out and said that the friend actually needed to go to work, and so she needed to leave in a few minutes. So I thought, well, I want to serve her something before she leaves, and I don't know how much longer I'm gonna have to bake this, quite a bit extra. So I took that half a bagel and toasted it and added some cream cheese on top for her, and she took that with her along with a banana. And I had made her a cup of coffee, and I put that in a little to-go cup, so she was able to have something to eat as she was driving over to her job. And I was happy about that, but I was glad there was something to back me up, something to give her. Um, but I will say that I also burned the bagel just a bit. And I was thinking, what is that burning smell? It was another burning smell, right? So that was my sort of disaster in the kitchen this morning. And in fact, I do have things like that happen to me a lot. So just to let you know, I am definitely not the model of a perfect homemaker or a perfect cook. And I do have these fiascos in the kitchen quite anytime that I decide to do a big project. So yes, I had to kind of laugh at it, didn't I? Laugh at my mistakes and still enjoy. And my husband and daughter and I enjoyed that Dutch baby after her friend had left. And I think I'm now needing to now clean my oven. So the recipes for this chapter 62. All right, those were the salmon salad, and that uses a cup of salmon flaked. It's interesting. She says to break the salmon apart carefully with a silver fork. Then add diced celery, sweet pickles, salt, and hard-cooked eggs. Mix it together, and then add some salad dressing, like a cup of salad dressing over that. And then she arranges this salmon salad on top of some lettuce leaves. I like this part. She garnishes it. Remember, this is a luncheon that Alice is having, and these are things Alice is making for her friends that are going to be in her wedding. And so she wants to make it pretty for them. This is a group of young ladies. So she garnished this with hard-cooked eggs to represent daisies. So what she did was she cut the whites of each hard-cooked egg in 6 long petals. Arrange these on the salad. Cut the yolks in half and place in the center round side out. Arrange the pickle to represent stem and leaves. So she sliced pickle in strips for the leaves and stem and set that on top of the salmon salad, probably 1 per serving, 1 flower per serving. And then she made green beans with the butter sauce that has a little touch of paprika in it, which is a common spice used back in 1917, at least in the region that this cookbook author was from. And then we have the cream puffs, which were a dessert. And I've never made cream puffs. I wonder if you have. And yesterday I went to a little French bakery in town, and I had something similar in that it had a cream filling that was light, a very lightweight cream filling, and that was very sweet, and that was pretty tasty. It's not something I usually eat, but I went there for a special occasion. So cream puffs, she makes 12 of those and fills them with a cream filling. Okay, now we're going to go into chapter 63, and I love the title of this chapter, Motoring with the Dixons. Don't you love that term, motoring? Doesn't it just provoke just really old-fashioned times, and back when cars were first on the roads and people were enjoying touring and going for drives. So my husband and I went for a drive last weekend to a little rural community outside one of the nearby cities. It's a community a lot like ours, with a lot of nut groves, and it has a small town in the center and a little park, and we just drove through that area and took a look around, and that was fun. So I said, well, we're going to go motoring, and we did. So the Dixons, again, an older couple, somewhat older than Bettina and Bob. They have become good friends with Bob and Bettina, and you may remember that the Dixons were living in a hotel when we first met them, and that with Bettina's encouragement, Mrs. Dixon, whose name is Charlotte, but at first, when they didn't know her very well, they called her Mrs. Dixon rather than Charlotte. And at that time, Bettina was being a really good friend to her, Mrs. Dixon, by encouraging her to learn homemaking skills and help to find a house to rent. And so Mrs. Dixon's just taken off with that, and the Dixons are really enjoying their lives in the house now. So they dropped by one evening because it was a beautiful evening and they wanted to go motoring, and they wanted to take Bob and Bettina with them. But Bob and Bettina were eating dinner, so they waited, and Charlotte helped clear the dishes away from the table, and then they all went on their ride. In the meantime, though, the topic came up of getting rid of ants. So I wonder if you have any special tips on that. I had some recently that were so very tiny, tiniest little dark colored ants that would come in around a window in the kitchen. And I sprayed them with a rubbing alcohol and water mixture that was in a spray bottle. And that they did not like that, and they would stop coming through for a while. So I just continually applied that, and it seemed to kill them immediately. Also, the ones that were in their they were fanning out to go look for things, I guess, but I did get rid of them that way. So there was an interesting suggestion here for the red ants in the pantry that Mrs. Dixon found. Her aunt had told her to use a child's crayon. She also described it as a chalk, and to put that around the outside of some lids, and then put the food on top of the lids to keep the ants away from the food. So this was the technique that was given. And Bettina had some other kinds of ants in her kitchen before and had gotten rid of those too. Now, we also have some hints in this chapter on making a second meal from foods prepared for a meal the day before, but instead of serving them as leftovers, remaking them into different dishes. And I love this idea, and I do once in a while get to pull this off. So in this case, we have baked potatoes changed into creamed potatoes, because the leftover baked potatoes, I spelled it wrong when I wrote here on my notes. I don't know why I need to even correct that, but I'm the only one looking at it. Baked potatoes left over turned into creamed potatoes the next day. Chopped cabbage that was made for coleslaw, some was set aside and It was cooked in a scalloped cabbage dish. And then a hot roast that was served the next day was served as cold sliced roast. All right, so let's look at those recipes in the chapter Motoring with the Dixons. Bettina's recipes here are for the scalloped cabbage. And again, we've seen quite a few scallop dishes served. Very common for that era. Not something that I do very often. I love scalloped potatoes, and I sometimes make those for Thanksgiving, which is coming up next month. I might do that. Although I think I'll be traveling this year. Part of the family is traveling anyway. Scalloped cabbage is 1 cup of cooked cabbage, 1 tablespoon of butter, 1 tablespoon of flour, 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup milk, 2 tablespoons of fresh breadcrumbs, and 1 tablespoon of melted butter. This is just to make a portion for Bob and Bettina. So you're going to melt the butter, add the flour and salt, and mix well. Slowly pour over the milk and cook until creamy. So you're making a white sauce, aren't you? Then you add the cabbage. You pour it into a buttered baking dish. Add the breadcrumbs to the melted butter and place the buttered crumbs on the cabbage. Bake in a moderate oven for 15 minutes or until the crumbs are browned. So really you're just heating this through at that point, getting the cabbage hot, even though it's already cooked. The cabbage is already cooked. So you're getting the cabbage hot. One tip that she gave for cooking cabbage, which tends to make the house smell bad, she said to use a very large pot with a lot of water in it. I haven't tried that tip yet, but I remember it from a previous chapter. So she had this scalloped cabbage, and in the book it says escalloped, Escalloped, which was apparently an older alternate spelling for the scalloped, having come from a French term. All right, I'm very interested in this chili sauce, which to me is somewhat of a type of salsa that she calls chili sauce, CHILI, and it makes 1.5 pints that she then seals as though she's canning them. I'm not going to talk to you about that particular procedure because when we talked about canning, home canning, I suggested that you use the latest guidelines from the U.S. Department of Agriculture for safe canning practices. So this is going to have 12 large ripe tomatoes, 3 green peppers, 2 onions, 2 tablespoons of salt, and 2 tablespoons of sugar, and 1 tablespoon of ground cinnamon, and 3 cups of vinegar. All right, so she's going to peel the tomatoes and the onions and chop them separately very fine. Chop the pepper also and add the salt, sugar, and cinnamon. Isn't cinnamon an interesting ingredient in this chili sauce? Mix all the ingredients together and add the vinegar. Cook 1 1/2 hours over a moderate fire, stirring sufficiently to prevent sticking. And then bottle it. Okay, when cool. So I'm thinking about Tex-Mex food. One time, years ago when I was in Texas, I did try the Tex-Mex at one of the restaurants there, and I'm wondering if that kind of idea of cinnamon in there, that's what that reminds me of, some Tex-Mex. What do you think? I'm in California. I've lived in Southern California. I've lived on the Central Coast, and now I live in Northern California in a rural area. We in California eat a lot of Mexican food, and it's not Tex-Mex style. And this salsa would be quite different to have the cinnamon in it for us, and also to have so much vinegar. And green peppers, I'm wondering if she means bell peppers. That would be a little different for a salsa also. We would usually use a jalapeno or some other kind of peppers in our salsas here. So this is a chili sauce. Interesting. And I'm wondering if she's serving that over the cold sliced lamb or if she's serving that alongside the scalloped cabbage. It doesn't say. All right. Now we have the cup custards for dessert. And to make 3 portions, you're going to beat 2 eggs slightly. Then you're going to add 4 tablespoons of sugar and 2 cups of milk added slowly. Then you're going to add 1/8 teaspoon of salt, and a few gratings of nutmeg. So back in the day, the home cooks would grate their own nutmegs. They're little rock-like round pieces that then you use a very fine grater on them. So a few gratings of nutmeg. Nutmeg is common even today on a custard, isn't it? And 1/4 teaspoon of vanilla. Then you're going to stir well and pour into well-buttered cups. Sprinkle the nutmeg on top. Set the cups in a pan of hot water and bake in a moderate oven until a knife comes out clean upon piercing the custard, about 35 minutes. Do not allow the water in the pan to boil. Serve the custard cold, removing from the cups just before ready to serve. The custards may be served in cups. Now, in another chapter, we talked about all things like that. We talked about custards and flan and creme brulee, and it seems like there was one other dessert that we talked about in that chapter. Very similar desserts that are made with eggs and milk and sugar. And so that's appearing again as a dessert. And so I know my mother loved custard, and it is an old-fashioned treat. All right. So that is all I have for you. I'm thinking that's it. So thank you for joining me for chapters 62 and 63. I'm hoping to record another chapter this weekend and get that loaded up also. Another 2 chapters rather. So we are in the middle of walnut harvest on our property, and there is a lot of background noise here. I do have the window open because it's a beautiful day. You may have heard some machinery in the background. I apologize for that. There is nothing I can do about it other than close the window, and then would still have the shaking. Our whole house shakes when the trees are shaken, which is kind of fun and kind of worrisome. All right, take care.